Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to episode 6 of 2021's Virtual Masonic Education series entitled 21st Century Conversations on Freemasonry. This 12-part series is supposed to be very conversational in nature, and we have an excellent presentation for you tonight. Worshipful Brother Jeriel Smith, who will be introduced momentarily, will be talking about Observant Masonry. For those of you who are returning, thank you for coming back. And for those of you who are new, we welcome you and hope you enjoy this evening. First, I would like to recognize the Masonic sponsors and go through the typical protocol of our evening before we begin with the Masonic education. The Rubicon Masonic Society is an invitation-only private group of Master Mason Freemasons located in Lexington, Kentucky. The purpose of the Rubicon Masonic Society is to establish a deeper understanding and connection with Freemasonry, with its traditions and practices, to further cement the brotherhood of its members and guests through conviviality and unity outside of the lodge. The Ware Lodge of Research is dedicated to helping brothers pursue further light in Masonry. It was chartered in 1965 and is Kentucky's oldest research lodge. The lodge was named after Most Worshipful Brother William O. Ware, who served as Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Kentucky in his 1957-58 term. And lastly, Lexington Lodge No. 1 was chartered in 1788 and is the oldest Masonic lodge in Kentucky. The lodge has historic membership, including senators, congressmen, governors, and mayors. Lexington Lodge No. 1 strives to create and deliver a heritage observance culture reminiscent of Freemasonry in the past. Alongside my co-host this evening, Worshipful Brother Dan Kimball, past master of William O. Ware Lodge of Research and recorder of Rubicon; Worshipful Brother Tom Nitschke, current master of William O. Ware Lodge of Research and member of the Rubicon Masonic Society; Worshipful Brother John Bizak, past master of Lexington Lodge No. 1 and vice chairman of the Rubicon Masonic Society. My name is Brian Evans. I'm the past and current master of Lexington Lodge No. 1 and chairman of the Rubicon Masonic Society. And again, I want to welcome and thank you for joining us this evening. Worshipful Brother Tom Nitschke, will you please do the honors of delivering an opening devotion for our guests?
Brethren, let us pray. Grand Architect of the universe, as we gather together today for this meeting, may we be guided in all we say or do by a strong sense of your presence with us. Grant us for our labors the wages proper for us, the corn of nourishment, the wine of refreshment, and the oil of joy. May our meeting together on this day be such that nourishes and sustains us in the work which is ours as Masons. May the friendship we share as brethren give refreshment to our spirits. May the proceedings in which we are engaged and the friends we greet today give us joy that encourages us, revitalizes us, and adds deep meaning to our lives together. Amen.
So mote be. Thank you, brother. Brothers and friends, the purpose of our Virtual Masonic Education is to assist in the improvement of oneself by establishing a deeper understanding of Freemasonry, of its traditions and practices, and further cementing the brotherhood of the fraternity for the betterment of mankind. Any opinions expressed during this Virtual Masonic Education will be those of the presenter or the participant and do not necessarily reflect the views of any lodge or Grand Lodge or the Rubicon Masonic Society. By participating with us tonight, you do consent to our guidelines and our full disclaimer, which can be found at rubiconmasonicsociety.com/disclaimer. Brothers and friends, let me go through a few more pieces of protocol before we begin. I want to remind everybody that these are not tiled meetings. Masons and non-Masons are welcome to attend and are encouraged to participate. Please be mindful of anything discussed this evening, that it should be suitable for Masons of all degrees as well as non-Masons. Gentlemanly manners are to be expected at all times. No alcohol, smoking, food, or foul language is permitted. There will also be no discussion of politics or religion at any time. In an effort to make sure that this virtual meeting is as enjoyable for everyone as possible, we recommend the following. Attire for each meeting should be coat and tie. Please type your name, if you haven't already done so, into your box and any appropriate Masonic title or location under your video so you can identify yourself to others here this evening. If you're not a Mason, please simply type guest after your name. Please enable your video camera so all others can see you. Please reduce any background noise and keep your microphone muted when not speaking. Please turn off all other computer programs, cell phones, etc., and eliminate outside distractions. And finally, please be patient should we incur any technical difficulties. Brothers and friends, tonight's speaker and presenter will be Worshipful Brother Jeriel Smith, who will be talking on Observant Masonry. And to do the honors of our introduction, I will pass the microphone over to Worshipful Brother John Bizak.
Thank you, brother. Worshipful Brother Jeriel Smith is a retired litigation attorney. He was made a Mason in 1966 in Ridgecrest, California. And having been Master Counselor of its DeMolay chapter, in 62, he received the Order's Meritorious Service Medal in 63 and the Chevalier degree in 64. He's presently an active member of 3 California Blue Lodges. He's founding member of one of those lodges. Each of the lodges is characterized as an observant lodge by the Masonic Restoration Foundation. He's a life member of 2 Scottish Rite Valleys in California, lifetime mediator, and Jeriel is an active member of the Academy of Reflection, a school of Masonic meditation in Guthrie, Oklahoma, and is part of a group that leads AOR meditations at the Scottish Rite reunions for his home valley in Pasadena, where he also has roles in their 28th and 30th degrees. He studied, practiced, and taught mediation for over 40 years and has often led mediations and gives many talks on a wide variety of esoteric and other related topics. Jeriel is a frequent speaker at Blue Lodges throughout Southern California, and he's also an editorial board member of the popular Southern California Research Lodge's monthly publication, Fraternal Review. He's an honorary member of the Rubicon Masonic Society and has been very active as an active participant in this lecture series since May of 2020. He's here with us tonight to speak on the topic of observant Freemasonry. Brother Jeriel, the floor is yours.
Brother Jeriel, I am pulling up your presentation, so just a moment.
Beautiful, and I've finally figured out to be able to unmute myself, and while he's while Worshipful Brother Brian is getting at my talk, I would like to specifically thank him for agreeing to share his screen and share the PowerPoint presentation that goes with this. And before beginning the talk, I'd like to thank the Rubicon Masonic Society, the William O. Ware Lodge of Research, and Lexington No. and their leaders for giving me this opportunity to share with you this evening my thoughts on the subject of the talk that was originally titled The Purpose, Principles, and Practices of Observant Freemasonry. I also want to thank everyone assembled here for your support of Masonry and of the lodges that have brought us all together on this occasion. That said, I want to also note that I'm going to be reading from a written script. So if I'm not making constant eye contact with everybody, you have my apologies. In the tricentennial year of 2017, Masons around the world celebrated the 300th anniversary of the founding of the first Masonic Grand Lodge in 1717 by 4 London Masonic lodges. While this was the first significant effort to unify the way Freemasonry is practiced, it was not the last, nor was it the beginning of speculative Masonry, as sometimes supposed. Historic records show that Masonic lodges had been active in the British Isles, mostly out of public view, for at least a century or more prior to 1717. Since then, Masonry has grown into a worldwide fraternity, with a multitude of Grand Lodges in many countries, including Grand Lodges in every one of these United States. Masonic ritual has greatly evolved since that time, and it now varies in certain details from country to country, and even from state to state in the US. One prime responsibility of each Grand Lodge is to assure uniformity in the rituals is practiced by all lodges within its jurisdiction. The purposes and practices of observant Masonry, best known by the term traditional observance, do not involve any deviation from the established rituals promulgated by our Grand Lodges. Instead, as implied by the term traditional, observant Freemasonry seeks to restore certain practices and traditions dating back to the earlier days of Freemasonry. Such restoration primarily affects three things. One, the manner and intensity of how our rituals are performed. Two, the pace of candidates' passage through the craft degrees. And three, the depth of each Mason's exploration into the history, philosophy, symbolism, and spiritual psychological significances of their fraternity. Such study and practice often leads to seeing Freemasonry's place within the larger and still ongoing traditions of humanity's perennial wisdom teaching. It's important at the outset to stress that traditional observance, at least in its fullest forms, is not for everyone. It is only for those lodges and their members who freely embrace its purposes, principles, and practices. There's nothing deficient or inferior in any way with lodges that have no interest in changing their own lodge's culture from what they have long been comfortable in doing. More importantly, it is incumbent on brothers whose lodges do choose to practice Freemasonry in the observant style to avoid developing any sense of superiority over those whose lodges do not so choose. Ours is a fraternity of great variety and profound acceptance of and respect for one another's divergent beliefs, which is the reason that once the doors are closed on a tiled lodge, all discussion of religion and politics is left outside the door. Our nation was founded largely by Freemasons on the principle that all men are created equal and endowed by their creator with inalienable rights. This principle arose from the same 16th century Enlightenment movement that inspired and was inspired by Freemasons, who in turn inspired the premier Grand Lodge. Masons were at the heart of the Enlightenment, giving us the principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity that fueled the 18th century revolutions in America and France, though those conflicts led to different short-term results: democracy in America and, for a while, dictatorship in France. It is indelibly inculcated in the ritual of our craft degrees that all Masons meet on the level, meaning that we have equal dignity among ourselves as Masons, from the newest entered apprentice in the northeast corner of the lodge to the most honored of Grand Masters. Thus, Masons should not seek to make themselves better than their brothers. Rather, Masons strive throughout their lives to continue making themselves better than they were the day before. This is equally as true for Masonic lodges as it is for Masonic brothers. This purpose, represented by the symbolism of the rough and perfect ashlars, compels our sustained efforts, individually and collectively, toward excellence in all we say and do. This is the most salient purpose of observant Freemasonry, and all of its practices are intended to pursue such excellence in how Masons in their lodges do their work. Toward this end, observant practices are intended to restore the profound, life-changing nature of initiation through returning to the best of traditional practices that harken back to the fraternity's early beginnings amongst the lodges that had existed long before the first Grand Lodge. There is no intention to introduce novel changes to the uniformity of our rituals, establishment and maintenance of which was and remained the primary purposes of our Grand Lodges. These basic preliminaries being duly noted, let us now consider in more detail the specific principles and practices of observant Freemasonry. The Masonic Restoration Foundation, which I'll refer to after this as the MRF, which was organized to promote and support the practices of observant Freemasonry, has established 12 guiding tenets for observant Masonry, stating, the Masonic Restoration Foundation is a group of regular Masons who promote those traditions in Freemasonry which are centered on the shared dialogue of men, embracing the nature of God, self-improvement, and civil duty. We believe that in so doing, Masons will return to the development of a fraternal culture of learning and intellectual growth, which will not only benefit the individual Mason, but society as a whole. The goal of the foundation is to restore Freemasonry to the historical and philosophical intent of the organizational founders. Lodges that support the mission, purposes, and goals of the MRF have a responsibility to creatively and faithfully excel in the rules and regulations of their respective Grand Lodges. The MRF serves as a clearinghouse of the best practices in Freemasonry. The intent of our Masonic founders. This is all taken right off of the website of the MRF. The MRF endorses the following tenets as being the verifiable historical intentions of the founders of speculative Masonry, as established from the time of the premier Grand Lodge. They are essential to the character of the Masonic institution and widely accepted as representing the best practices in Masonic lodges across the world. It is the intent of Freemasonry that the fraternity is, above all else, an initiatic order whose main purpose is to teach good men to subdue their passions, become masters over themselves, and grow in life to be better men. I'm going to leave off in each of these cases the predicate, the intent of Freemasonry is that, and proceed from that to the principle involved. Only those who are duly and truly prepared are eligible to be admitted as members. In keeping with the Masonic statement to make good men better, a man should only be initiated into a lodge if he is already good and capable of being made better. Determining qualifications of men and seeking admission is an essential aspect of upholding the integrity of our ancient institution. Next, that its ceremonies should be conducted with the utmost reverence and solemnity. Masonic ritual ceremonies should always be performed in a solemn and dignified manner. All efforts pertaining to the presentation of the degrees of craft masonry should be focused on the candidate, providing each with the most profound and transformative initiatic experience possible. Every Mason should be desirous to learn and apt to teach. Sufficient time between degrees should be given to each candidate so as to enhance his self-transformation through personal intellectual study, reflection, and contemplation. It is incumbent on every lodge to be aware of the progressive nature of its teaching curriculum and to provide its candidates with a ritual coach and the mentorship of well-informed brethren. Each candidate should demonstrate his proficiency in learning at each individual state or degree before he can be advanced to the next stage. Traditionally, Masonic learning includes a demonstration of the candidate's understanding of the journey from darkness to light, ignorance to knowledge, and his insight into the uses and applications of Masonic symbols, allegories, and myths introduced by the ritual ceremonies. Every newly raised Mason, Master Mason, should feel that he has grown by his Masonic experience. Members of Masonic lodges should be actively engaged in Freemasonry. Historically, attendance at Masonic meetings and functions was mandatory, with fines paid for absences not excused by the lodge. Active participation in the business and purposes of Freemasonry by a large majority of those who belong is essential to the growth and vitality of a lodge and in carrying out its role in improving society. It's the intent of Freemasonry that Masons come together and seek fellowship and fraternity in a common pursuit of virtue and moral improvement. This has historically best been accomplished in small and intimate gatherings of fraternal associations. Lodges should be large enough to be efficient, but small enough for all of the brethren of the lodge to closely know each other. Fraternal ties must always be stronger than social ties. Masonic relationships are expected to be forged between members in the same way a brother grows close to a sibling. It's the intent of Freemasonry that through the exercise of genuinely brotherly love, men become better enabled to regard humankind as one family. Charity, being the chief of all social virtues, encumbers Masons to aid, support, and protect each other, relieve the distress and misfortune of family members, and consciously contribute to the betterment of society at large. It is the intent of Freemasonry that lodges should make regular time for feasting, communal dining, and embracing the social enjoyment of their members. Holding a formal dining event after meetings has long been a traditional element of Masonic evenings. Table lodges and feasts of St. John offer opportunities to observe this important Masonic tradition with the larger Masonic community. Fellowship of men is best embraced in the convivial environments of sociability. It is the intent of Freemasonry that its formal and tiled assemblies should be dedicated to the attainment of a deeper knowledge and understanding of Freemasonry by all its members. To this end, the presentation of lectures, poetry, music, discussions of the arts, philosophy, and history, and the interpretation of symbols, allegories, and myths of Masonic ritual all play an important role in furthering the aims and growth of a Masonic lodge and its members. Each tiled meeting should be devoted, at least in part, to the realization of this profound purpose. It is the intent of Freemasonry that only the ablest among us should serve in an office of Masonry. Serving in a Masonic office is a privilege and not a right. Officers of Masonic lodges should be elected and appointed based solely on their merit. Officers who are invited to progress in the offices of Masonry should be able to demonstrate their qualifications to lead and execute the duties of their office. And above all, the most important intention of a Freemason is self-improvement. The improvement of the individual is the most fundamental aspect of improving society. These basic practices were compiled by the MRF from a variety of sources, but largely echo the fraternity's ancient charges. It is worth noting that the MRF no longer characterizes these practices as traditions, and instead emphasize them as the intent of our Masonic founders. This shift was made in recognition of the fact that the fraternity's early lodges, like ours today, practice a wide variety of traditions, not all of which advance the essential high purposes of Masonry. Thus, what the MRF seeks to restore are only those traditions that represent the best of our founders' original intentions. A lodge that chooses to practice Masonry in the observant form will, to one degree or another, subscribe to these intentions. However, it must be kept in mind that there is no single monolithic model for what every observant lodge does or even looks like. Such lodges vary greatly from what they wear to how they have their meals. The MRF holds an annual symposium among observant lodge leaders and brothers. At the 2013 MRF Symposium, Sean Attire, past master, the editor of Philalethes, delivered an address entitled A Classic Vision of Masonic Restoration, 3 Key Principles of Traditional Freemasonry, in which he detailed a solid rationale to inform and support the practices of lodges that are committed to observant Freemasonry. These 3 principles are: 1, speculative purpose; 2, initiatic emphasis; and 3, traditional basis. Brother Attire argues persuasively that every practice undertaken by an observant lodge should be subjected to the test of whether it furthers each of these principles in their pursuit of restoring our fraternity's founding tradition. The first principle, speculative purpose, arises from the fundamental difference between operative and speculative Masons. The former, beginning in the 11th century, used the tools of the builder's trade to erect from stone the cathedrals, castles, and public buildings that still dot Europe in the 21st century, a full millennium later. Speculative Masons started to be welcomed into the lodges of operative Masons around the 15th or 16th centuries, and by the early 1700s, had mostly replaced the operative Masons following the demise of cathedral and castle building in Europe. The modern lodges of Freemasonry are now entirely speculative only, meaning that we employ the working tools of the operative Masons, along with many related symbols, for the purpose of illustrating and illuminating moral lessons essential to making good men into better men. This also, metaphorically speaking, is a building practice, one of building character instead of physical structures, the end product of which is that house not built with hands, eternal in the heavens. All practices adopted by observant Masonic lodges must be in furtherance of this speculative purpose. Second principle, initiatic emphasis, has to do with the process of how an observant lodge performs the rituals established by the Grand Lodge under which they are charted. While the ritual itself remains unchanged, the observant lodge aims to make their ceremonies truly a more profoundly life-changing experience by more strict maintenance of a formal, solemn, spiritual environment throughout each degree, entirely eliminating such distractions as casual conversations and any other distractions during the degrees. Other environmental enhancements may be used, such as entering the lodge together in silence, lighting the lodge by candles, use of incense and music, the employment of a chamber of reflection prior to degree conferrals, and a chain of union ceremony after the lodge closes. Such formalities are not ends in and of themselves. Rather, their purpose is to impress as strongly and indelibly as possible that the candidate's initiation marks his passage from a former way of life into a new, spiritually infused life, dedicated to self-improvement as a means of improving society as well. It is important here to note that our California Grand Lodge requires practices such as the chamber of reflection and the chain of union to be used either before the lodge is opened or after it is closed, in light of the fact that they are not part of the official rituals recognized by the Grand Lodge. Their specific recommendations are included in the March 2017 issue of the Fraternal Review, a monthly journal published by the Southern California Research Lodge, of which I was at that time serving my second term as its master. The process through the degrees by each candidate is also slower, deeper, and more deliberate. Candidates not only meet their professional proficiency requirements in full form, they must also study to fully learn the lessons of each degree before passing to the next degree. This may include writing papers and even reading them aloud to their lodge brothers. Members who sign an applicant's petition usually commit to mentoring that incoming Mason, not only through his degrees, but throughout their entire time in their lodge. To progress from entered apprentice to master Mason in observant fashion usually take a year or even 2. The third principle, traditional basis, holds that what observant lodges do and how they do it must be founded upon practices that are in keeping with what Masonic lodges have done historically. The need to accommodate this aspect is a major driver of observant lodges' emphasis on their members studying the history of the craft as well as the deeper meanings of its symbols and allegories. Many of these practices have fallen into disuse, such as the Chamber of Reflection, which some have called an innovation. The November 2016 issue of SCRL's Fraternal Review focuses on the Chamber of Reflection. One article therein by Worshipful Brother Cliff Porter traces the use of the chamber to the 1740s. Another, by Brother Ben Williams, notes that, quote, it cannot be said to be an innovation in the craft degrees, and argues that its recent absence, quote, could actually be termed the innovation. Thus, the use of a chamber of reflection meets the principle of traditional basis. Though only referred to in the MRF's catalog of our founders' intentions, observance may also include the study and practice of meditation and contemplation, which have their traditional roots and our ritual several admonitions to candidates to contemplate, reflect, or ponder upon various of the symbols presented during the degrees. Such mental spiritual work not only penetrates the symbolic meanings, it strengthens the mind. The great value of meditation, of which reflection is one form, indeed of a variety of contemplative practices that also includes prayer, is to strengthen one's mental and spiritual resources that are essential to a deeper understanding of Masonic wisdom, which is presented in symbolic and allegorical forms. Worshipful Brother H.L. Haywood in 1921 described why contemplation is so important to such understandings. Quote, we cannot learn the message of a symbol with a merely passive and receptive mind, because it is of the genius of symbolism to hide as well as to reveal. When a thing is conveyed to us in clear, simple words or in plain pictures, such as one sees in the movies, there is no need that one make any great effort of his own mind to comprehend it all. But when a symbol is put before us, and we have to reason for securing its message to us, our own minds must act, for no symbol wears its meaning on its sleeve. And that in itself is a virtue, because many men are cursed by the refusal to use their own facility. They go through the whole of their lives parroting other men's thoughts, and such a life is necessarily lacking in the pleasure of making mental discoveries, which is one of life's richest joys. Perhaps the finest book available on the restoration of observant Freemasonry and the purpose and value of its practice is Observing the Craft. Its author, Andrew Hammer, longtime president of the MRF, is among the most informed, enthusiastic, and articulate advocates of observance. He is also the author of an excellent essay entitled 8 Steps to Excellence, the Observant Lodge, that elaborates on the basic practices at the heart of observance that I read to you a few minutes ago. It's available on their website at www.masonicrestorationfoundation.org. In observing the craft, Brother Hammer describes its essence thus, quote, observance is as much a state of mind as a set of actions. In fact, each helps the other reach their maximum potential. The things we think and the philosophical attitude we cultivate as regards to Freemasonry and its associated concerns will influence and improve our actions in the lodge. The actions we perform in the lodge, when done well and to a degree of proficiency, aid the mind in maintaining its disciplined state in ritual and introspection. The goal to be achieved by this activity is a high state of concentration on exactly those things we find in the craft which enable us to be that better man. It is a deliberately contemplative union between the mind and body, which enables us to take the result of that union into the soul. I think that's worth repeating. It is a deliberately contemplative union between the mind and body, which enables us to take the result of that union into the soul. Continuing to quote Brother Hammer. In other words, observance is both a state of mind that manifests itself through a set of actions, and a set of actions which help cultivate a specific state of mind. The overall experience, when done properly, creates a sense of deep fulfillment and almost otherworldly atmosphere within the lodge and among the brethren involved. The key to achieving this essential goal of taking one's perceptions into the soul, by which we refer to the highest and deepest spiritual part of our beings, it is the divine spark that can unite us in consciousness with the grand architect of the universe. I have practiced meditation for more than 4 decades, and I believe it is a key, not only to a deeper understanding of Masonic symbolism, but also to a more transformative experience of becoming an initiate in any of humanity's wisdom schools, including Freemasonry. Excuse me a moment. Thus, during the conferral of our degrees, it is vitally important that the level of self-conscious focus prescribed by Brother Hammer should be attained and maintained, not only by those actively performing the various roles and presenting the ceremony, but as well by all of the brethren in attendance. W.L. Wilmshurst, in his paper entitled The Ceremony of Initiation, Analysis and Commentary, described the effect to be achieved by such unanimous focus as follows. The unofficiating brethren present are not meant to be mere spectators of the ceremony. The whole lodge, and not only the acting officials of it, should participate in the mystery. Great is the power of united, concentrated thought and intention in impressing a candidate's mentality and awakening it to new and spiritual perception. And to this end, the spoken work of the master and the officers actually concerned can be greatly assisted by the silent mental cooperation of the unofficiated brethren. My brothers, the power of ritual lies in its repetition. As Masonic ritual is far too densely packed with significance or its meanings to be fully taken in at any one time, especially the candidate who is at the time exposed to a deeply emotional experience. A Mason's comprehension of our rituals is deepened every time he attends, let alone participates in, one of our degree conferrals. The process of initiation thus occurs over a lifetime of repeated exposure to our degrees. And it is just important to give each repetition just as full intention as when you were yourself the candidate. Based on my personal experience, I see 3 stages of comprehending the depths of meaning in our Masonic teachings. The first stage is attending our rituals, which give an opening into understanding by words and actions, including lectures that state the basic meanings of what has been said and done before the candidate. The second stage is study, including readings from the many books and articles that have been written on Masonic teachings, and attending talks and presentations, such as we're doing this evening. This deepens our intellectual grasp of Masonic wisdom, as does the conversation and discussion among interested brethren that accompany those activities. The third stage, and this is very important, is contemplation in all of its various forms, which are the portal to comprehending the ineffable depths of meaning that lie beyond the intellect in the realms of higher consciousness, accessible through soul contact. For those of you who are interested in pursuing this spiritual journey, I commend to you a most excellent book, Contemplative Masonry, Basic Applications of Mindfulness, Meditation, and Imagery for the Craft, by C.R. Chuck Dunning, the founder of the Academy of Reflection, a Scottish rite body that teaches and practices Masonic meditation. I would also like to use this occasion to recommend another book, Millennial Apprentices, The Next Revolution in Freemasonry, by Samuel Friedman. Brother Samuel not only examines Andrew Hammer's 8 steps to excellence, he also analyzes the generation of men now approaching Freemasonry, citing several studies of their attitudes and preferences, from which he infers that observant Masonry, of the type that I've been describing to you in this talk, is just the thing that they are seeking to find to give greater meaning to their lives, including, as suggested by his subtitle, the observant Masonry could be the solution to declining membership that has vexed our fraternity for the past half-century. I could not agree more, even though I am now the age of that generation's fathers, and even quite a few grandfathers. I want now to conclude this talk with a few personal observations that sum up my own strong interest in promoting the purpose, principles, and practices of observant Freemasonry. For many years since my initiation into Masonry at the age of 21, our fraternity has been vexed by the problems of dwindling membership and inactive members. Many ways of dealing with this have been discussed, and some even put into practice. One trend has involved making entry into Freemasonry more convenient and less time-consuming for today's men who are busy with their families, friends, jobs, and professions. There are even places now where one can become a member of Masonry in a single weekend, with all 3 craft degrees conferred in rapid succession. Personally, I don't know how they manage the requirement that a brother be proficient in each degree before proceeding to the next. What I do know is this: First, this make it quick and easy approach has not had the desired result of increasing our membership. And second, it has made something of inestimable value, initiation that is truly life-changing, available, as it were, on the cheap. As a result, even the members we do get seem more apt not to complete their degrees, or if they do, not to become active, sustaining members of our lodges. As Andrew Hammer quoted earlier states it, quote, "There are some things in life that cannot be made of a lesser quality, nor sold at a lesser price, even if the seller should become less prosperous as a result." A teaching in the Jewish tradition declares that even if there is not one person to worship the Almighty, the value and glory of the Almighty nevertheless remains intact, and the Almighty continues to exist. Dear brethren, and this is Andrew Hammer talking, not me. Dear brethren, the value and glory of Freemasonry exists whether or not we are 10 or 10 million. Let us not call out this mystic angel Freemasonry from the Holy of Holies so that it may be abused by the unworthy. Close quote. Our California Grand Lodge does not allow making of Masons in a weekend, but we have taken some steps in this direction, such as short form proficiencies and multi-candidate degrees. Values to be had by the observant principles and practices I've described this evening can be achieved by lodges without converting themselves to fully traditional observant engagement. The MRF, in fact, allows lodges to designate themselves as traditional observant lodges without doing so, if they instead choose to use only some of these ideas in an inspirational spirit. This is the case with both of my original Blue Lodges, Culver City Fauché, number 467, and South Pasadena, number 290, that are listed by the MRF as traditional observant, but neither of which has fully adopted the 12 intentions that I referred to earlier. I also belong to a very much smaller lodge created only 4 or 5 years ago, Anchor Bell Lodge 868, which does do everything in the observant fashion. Just as Masons do not try to become better than their brothers, but to improve themselves, observant lodges do not strive to be better than other lodges. They strive only to be better than themselves. In conclusion, I believe that the key to having more and more active members in our lodges is to make Masonic initiation what it was originally intended to be, a truly life-changing spiritual experience. Observant practices can significantly enhance this process. The initiatic experience of our craft degrees merely opens a door into a fraternity that is among the modern heirs of the world's mystery schools and perennial wisdom traditions. But if no further exploration of the depths of Masonic teachings is made available, the newly made Mason remains perpetually on the doorstep of his higher potentials. Through Masonic education, enhanced by meditation and reflection, a Mason learns the history of our fraternity and the deeper meanings and applications of our craft and its symbolism. Through observant lodges, Lodge brothers learn to intensify their focus in order to experience the craft degrees on a more profoundly spiritual level. And when, through conscious effort, the Mason's soul is brought into active awareness of and participation in our rituals, his greater comprehension of Masonic symbolism and allegory will become his guide and strengthen him throughout his lifelong journey in search of greater light and Freemasonry. And I thank you, my brothers, for your attention.
Thank you, Worshipful Brother Jeriel Smith. Appreciate that presentation very much. Well composed. So, Jeriel, I want to put you on the spot politely and professionally just to get your opinion. So if observant Freemasonry is the goal that we're all after in this fraternity, so to speak, from a very high level, what is the opposite of observant Masonry, since observant Masonry is essentially what we're doing or supposed to be doing?
Well, there are a number of examples of this, and they depart to varying degrees from observant practices. There are what are called knife and fork lodges, where the main thing is to get together, eat, have a good time, and that's a worthy expression of brotherly love. There are lodges that solely concentrate on charity. Again, a very worthy process. But I've been to many lodges, including the lodge where I was originally raised, where Masonic education, if practice at all, means ritual practice. And just practicing what's on the page. Well, it's not on the page. We don't write it down. It's on the page in code in a lot of jurisdictions. Still leaves you at that superficial point that I described right at the end, where you're just on the doorstep. They don't go into that deeper stuff. They don't advocate for the deeper study. I've actually had discussions at lodges where brothers have said, we shouldn't be speculating into the meaning of the ritual and the symbols beyond what we're told about it in the degrees. I think that conscious decision to stay on the doorstep instead of going in and fully committing yourself to an initiatory change, that's the distinguishing factor in those lodges. And many of those brothers, I feel the warmth of brotherly love and fellowship in their company, but I don't feel that I feel that a lot of those people and those lodges are really missing out on the potential that Masonry has to really show a brother the way to reinvent himself and to make him truly that better man.
I'd like to call on someone that you mentioned a great deal in your presentation to get his perspective, feedback, and perhaps any additional comments. Worshipful Brother Andrew Hammer, I know that you're on, and if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to call on you for any comments or feedback regarding the presentation you've heard today, because you were a big part of it, and a lot of the inspiration regarding Observant Masonry clearly has come from you.
Well, hello, Worshipful Brother Brian, and hello, Worshipful Brother Jeriel. Good to see you, my brother.
Good to see
You too, Brother Andrew.
So, just some thoughts. First of all, excellent presentation, and thank you for it. Thank you for stepping up and speaking out on these things for brothers to help spread the education on the concepts. I would then gently offer some thoughts about some of the things that you've offered here this evening. Terminology is very important to me, and it's something that I struggle with, mainly because it's something that has been presented to me as a challenge, as I've spoken about these ideas, not only in the United States, but also throughout the world. And I would offer that the terms observant and traditional observance are not interchangeable. In fact, I would not use the term traditional observance at all. And that's nothing new. If you go to my book on page 124 of the paper book, I say very clearly that there really is no such thing as traditional observance. I'm not going to go into a long explanation of why I have always said that, but simply to say that tradition in the simplest form is about what was actually done, not what one desires or what one wishes had been done. And in Freemasonry, we don't have those solid traditions that we can refer to. So for example, proficiency in between degrees is not traditional. We'd like to think that it is, but that was part of the problem, which led Grand Lodges and others in the 18th century to sort of try to fix the problem, because Masons were being made all throughout the 1700s in groups of men. They were being made in one day or within the course of a week. They were being made through expediency by very respected founders of the craft. So we really can't claim that these are traditions. And that's why we changed the focus to say that they were intentions. Because when we talk about intentions, we can say, this is what we wanted to do. This is what we think should be done and should have always been done. But we can't claim that it is a traditional observance, because there wasn't a traditional observance. The only other thing that hit my mind in sort of a nice way is that you referred in one of your slides to chambers of reflection. And I would just suggest that here again, it's not a tradition of Freemasonry to have multiple chambers of reflection. There's only one, and that's at the very beginning, because that's the beginning of the initiatic process. After the man undergoes the initiation, there's not really a need to go through additional chambers because he's already a brother. However, and this is the fun part of it, in some rituals, this is made a little more apparent. This is not a fixed observation. This is just my observation, my thought. And that is, if you look at it through the right lens, the third degree in and of itself is a chamber of reflection. And I say that without being able to reveal much more of that, but brothers who are aware of different systems of Masonry throughout the world will know what I'm alluding to. When I say the third degree perhaps is in itself a chamber of reflection for the entire lodge every time it's carried out. And then finally, in reference to the list of lodges, well, it's important to say that the Masonic Restoration Foundation doesn't allow lodges to do anything. We have no control over any lodges anywhere in the world, nor do we seek to have control over them. And if we did, we certainly would not designate them or allow them to use the appellation traditional observance for the reason that I mentioned before. The way that I look at the term today is that unless you're using it as a title, as in this presentation, Observant Masonry, Observant Freemasonry, you wouldn't capitalize the O, because the O is not the thing to capitalize. We must never lose sight of the fact that the capital letter goes with Masonry, because Masonry is that thing that we really are trying to focus on. Observant with a small o is the adjective to sort of help align ourselves to say, this is what we're trying to do in the way we think it was intended to be done. If we open up a larger discussion on traditionalism, oh my goodness, we'll be here for hours. And with that, I think I'll be quiet. Thank you, Worshipful Brother Brian, for allowing me the opportunity to say a few things. I didn't expect that, but I hope that what I offered was at least constructive.
Thank you.
I want to thank you too, Worshipful Andrew. I made references to the things that you were saying, and I am well aware of them. I only wish that you would be in every audience that I ever give that talk to, for the elaboration that you're able to you're able to provide. And I got to admit that I am an overuser of capitalization for emphasis, and I definitely respect what you have to say, and in my opinion, your book, Observing the Craft, is and ought to be right at the very top of the list of any brother who wants to really understand the depths of what our fraternity is about.
You're very kind, Brother Jeriel. Look forward to seeing you again as soon as we possibly can.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Worshipful Brother Hammer, for stepping in and offering your comments. Appreciate it. I'd like to, unless any questions come in, or if you want to raise your virtual hand, I'd like to call on a few people for additional comments to get their perspective. And I would like to start with a few members from Rubicon. And Worshipful Brother Alan Martin, I'm very curious to know your thoughts and take on observant masonry, its importance to you, perhaps how it has influenced you as a Mason, and anything else that might come to your mind for this topic.
Thank you, Brother Brian. When I was initiated into the craft, I was initiated into a lodge that really wasn't observant. And to some regards, they're still not observant. And I have found that the diminished participation of the members of the lodge is a direct result of that lack of observance, primarily because the lodge is not actually delivering on the promise of Freemasonry. They're not giving them anything to think about, to ponder and question why they're in the lodge to begin with, and how they might possibly be able to learn something new that would in fact make them better, not only as a person, but also on their journey to where they're ultimately trying to get. We have in that particular lodge, and I'm a member of several Blue Lodges. I'm a member of Lexington 1 and Robert M. Circle, and also William Ware. So we have a movement afoot to try to become more observant. And I hope that we're able to be successful, because when you don't experience a Masonic experience when you walk into the lodge, and you should every time that you attend lodge, then when you have a lodge that's not delivering on that, you'll find someplace else to go to receive a quality Masonic experience. I would like to say that I'm currently reading Worshipful Brother Hammer's book, and find it fascinating, and hope that information can be taken back to that particular lodge, and help guide and bring some thought and light into the minds that as Masons, we're in lodge for a specific reason, and we should pursue that reason. People come to lodge for different reasons, knock on the door for different reasons, but ultimately we're there to build our personal temple. And if we don't deliver on it, then it's kind of hard to achieve that goal.
Well said. Thank you, Worshipful Brother, for your comments. Worshipful Brother Jeriel, anything you want to add regarding that specific?
Well, I've had the same experience as the last couple of commentators have made of coming into a lodge that, in a sense, didn't know it was a Masonic lodge. I was raised in 1966, and a few years later, I turned to other sources to pursue my esoteric and spiritual beliefs. And during most of the time that I was practicing law for some 30 years, I was only passively a member. After I retired in 2012, I came back to Masonry and found out that while I had been gone, this movement that was just being described started. And ever since, I have concentrated my efforts, both in Blue Lodge and Scottish Rite, to promote those kind of values, particularly the contemplative practices. And that's been a big focus of our work at the Southern California Research Lodge. And I think there's a lot of progress being made, and we have a strong flow of candidates coming into to my lodge, particularly the one in South Pasadena, and that's what's drawing them to it, is getting the kind of things that so many of us did not find in the lodge that brought us into fraternity.
Thank you. Right, Worshipful Tom Jackson, if I may, I would like to call on you, sir, for your perspective on this topic. You've been to many lodges. You have traveled a great deal. What are your thoughts on Observant Masonry tonight?
Brian, I was involved with the beginning of the structure of the Masonic Restoration Foundation. It was a brainchild of a young man by the name of Dennis Chernanke. Unfortunately, as some of you will readily understand, a young man telling Grand Masters what was his ideas did not fly extremely well. Dennis is not connected with the foundation any longer. As I said, I was involved with the beginning. I'm the only one remaining on the board from the time that it was created. And I am totally convinced that our greatest hope for Freemasonry in North America is to be able to create the dominance of observant Freemasonry. The greatest challenge that we've had, and we're growing, the foundation is growing, the participation by Grand Lodges is growing in the United States and in Canada, not growing at nearly the rate that I would like to see it grow, but it is growing. The greatest challenges that we have on the creation of observant lodges lies within the leadership of the Grand Lodges. As indicated by Brother Smith, all observant lodges must operate under the laws of the Grand Lodge in the jurisdiction in which they exist. We meet resistance in the creation of chambers of reflection. Yet in my travels around the world, and I've been in a considerable number of lodges and Grand Lodges, chambers of reflection are almost universally a part of Freemasonry. Why the resistance to them in North America, I do not know. But certainly the intent of observant Freemasonry is to revert back to, and I emphasized that on one of the papers that I gave at one of the foundation meetings. It is not our goal to change Freemasonry into something that it is not. It is our goal to revert back to what Freemasonry once was. You've heard me, I'm sure you will recall, emphasizing constantly that the only areas of the world that Freemasonry is not growing is in the English-speaking countries. And in almost in all of them, we've changed our style of Freemasonry into a charitable objective. And that is not the purpose of Freemasonry. We can be charitable when we are charitable, but the purpose of Freemasonry is to take good men and make them better. We unfortunately try to buy back respect, and you can't buy respect. Respect must be earned. I do congratulate Brother Smith on his presentation tonight. I thought he did an excellent job on describing observant Freemasonry in a way it should function. Brian, it's good to be with you all again.
Great to see you, Worshipful Brother. Thank you for your comments. Worshipful Brother Kimball, do you have any wisdom to offer tonight? I know you do, so that question is more of a comment to piggyback of some of the things that were said tonight.
Worshipful Brother Brian, thank you for the opportunity. I think I ran out of wisdom several decades ago. But I do have a question for Worshipful Brother Jeriel. First of all, Brother Jeriel, let me say thank you for your presentation. Well done and well received. What advice would you give to the individual Mason who's an observant experience in Freemasonry, but is in a lodge that does not seek that same experience or does not offer that experience?
My observation would be don't make the ideal the enemy of progress. Don't try to totally impose the full program. Take whatever openings there are in a particular lodge and emphasize, improve this. So I think that incrementalism, as much as it tries our patience, it unfortunately is necessary. It's we've talked so many times about the trap of that's the way we've always done it, and I think another thing is to talk to the younger brothers. They're thirsting for this. If they know what it is, they will go for it. One of the things that we do very systematically at South Pasadena Lodge is when fellows come in, we make it clear you have to come to our lodge for about 6 months before we'll consider handing you a petition, and we make sure that brothers that are coming back I end up in discussions where we describe just what we want, and we also tell them there are a lot of other lodges. If you don't want what we're doing, we can point you in their direction. But if you want to really understand what Freemasonry is, and you're willing to put in the work, because we're going to make you work, then come to our lodge. But trying to eat the whole monster in a single sitting doesn't seem to work, and pushing them toward whatever paths along that route that they're open to considering. The more they do it, the more they're going to get demand, particularly from their younger members, to do more of that. That's been my experience, and I do travel a lot to lodges in Southern California, and the two main topics I talk about are observance and meditation.
That was a great line.
Amazingly, if you can get a lodge, if you're there, to let you try meditation, I have not had a single experience where they didn't say, "Wow, that's really interesting."
Worshipful Brother Smith, that was a great comment. Don't let the ideal be the enemy of progress. And I think that's something we all need to remember and keep in mind. Brother Crickard, I'd like to call on you for another perspective. You're a fellow craft Mason. You are at Lexington Lodge No. 1. You haven't probably had the ability to travel much yet, but what is it about Lexington Lodge No. 1, which is an observant lodge, that drew you to it?
Well, hopefully my answer will come out in what I'm trying to say here. So I'm going to go back and thank you for calling on me, Worshipful Master Evans, and thank you, Worshipful Master Smith, for the presentation. So, and maybe I'll answer your question with some of my statement here. So, and I want to go back and comment on the last question. So if you want to influence your lodge, and this is sort of my game plan at Lexington Lodge No. 1, is start early. You know, my plan is to sort of sit in all chairs and sort of influence, not try to influence the lodge when I'm the worshipful master, but to make small incremental changes as I'm moving through the chairs. And then when I get to the sit in the east, then I can sort of have all my ducks in a row and sort of have a plan for all the guys who were before me and all the guys who are after me to sort of make it more linear than try to do it all at once when I'm in the chair. So that's my idea. So hopefully I didn't just get myself not elected to any chairs.
Are you trying to say that I'm doing something incorrectly? Let's go back.
No. I'm just saying that's how I'm going to do it.
See how that plan lines up. Let me know in 5 years.
Yeah, well, I'm still hanging out. Okay.
Great. Go ahead. Keep going.
Hey, if you don't shoot for the top seat, you won't get it. So, okay. I agree with the point that being a more traditional lodge will attract more men to Freemasonry, I think. And to the statement, and I forget the actual statement that was made, but I agree to the point that I'd rather have 10 men who are, you know, observant Masons than 100,000 men who have the title of Master Mason, but are, you know, they're more interested in fish fries and pancake events. Mm-hmm. So it's good that we're concerned, not worry, that we're concerned about the future of Freemasonry, but I don't think we should focus on that concern as much as we should focus more on traditional or observant Freemasonry, because that's what's going to bring people to Freemasonry. And the idea of learning more about the seven liberal arts, or to be more spiritualism and ideas, or even meditation, that's something that people are looking for today, because in today's society, we're very disconnected. So we're looking for something to be more connected. I believe that. So, and, you know, and I was, not too long ago, I was in having a conversation, and, you know, it's like, what did you come to Freemasonry to do? And, you know, a lot of people say to become a better man, which you do become a better man, but it's to learn to subdue your passions and improve yourself through Masonry. So, you know, and maybe I answered your question there and also insulted you there. I'm sure I did both, but that's what my takeaway from the presentation, which I very much enjoyed. So thank you, Worshipful Master, for letting me speak, and I'll turn my mic off and turn it back over to you all.
Thanks, brother. No, that was great, and look forward to seeing your progression through the chairs as well. You're going to be an outstanding leader. You already are. We have a question that came in from Worshipful Brother Ron Witt. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. Why don't you unmute yourself and ask that question? It's a good question. I'd like to hear it come from you if you don't mind.
Greetings, everyone, from Fellowship Lodge number 668 in California, Yucaipa, California. Anyone knows where that is? Yeah, I am master of my lodge now, second year in, because of COVID, first year didn't count. And we have had, several young men, I call them young because they're younger than me, be interested in coming. They want to join the lodge. And I asked them that question, why, every time, as I'm sure all of us do, because I am certainly a student of human nature and observing why people do what they do. And I offer this question because I often wonder, how does the good man come to be in the first place? Yeah, we can certainly improve someone, and if they want to improve themselves, but where do they get that notion to be better or to be good in the first place? And I guess one could answer that by saying, our morals of a society, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, the golden rule. But I am seeing a real dichotomy in society today of those who have no idea how to be good. And in fact, they're going the other direction more and more. And I'm wondering, is it man's nature? Or they come to us because it's in their nature to want to better themselves? Or has something to do maybe with their mothers or fathers, teaching them to be a moral and right person, to understand that justice or being right, the moral sense, is important to chart one's path in life. And when they come across us, they hear, of course, the stories, and they think, well, maybe this is where I can get that moral compass straight. But I just wonder where these men are and where are they coming from, and is that perpetually happening? We always will have good men trying to be better, or could we be running out of good men wanting to be better? Where does that start? What can we do to help this process?
I'd like to offer my thoughts, and then anybody else who would like to answer that question, feel free. Worshipful Brother, I would say it's about quality over quantity. I think there's absolutely good men. There's 36 of us left here on this meeting now. There were 50 here when we started, I believe. And I would suggest that the first interesting hook that is drawing people to our fraternity is they want to be part of something. We are tribal in nature as a group. We like to be a part of other like-minded people. And I think from my perspective, it is about guarding the West Gate and make sure that the men we let in are in fact at least good men, not almost good men. You better already be a good man, or you shouldn't be a Freemason, and we shouldn't let that person in to the best of our ability of understanding during an investigation process, so forth. And then I think it is nurture from there. It's leadership, probably might be a better word, as I think we're all leaders looking for leadership, looking for guidance. And often the best leadership and guidance is we get from each other, from these conversations, to get different perspectives. But I think it's a combination of both would be my initial response. And like Brother Crickard said, he'd rather be in a room with 10 good men that are wanting to participate in observant masonry than 100 that, just want to get together for a dinner. But that's my perspective. That's my opinion. Welcome it to anyone else that would like to answer.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to call on Worship Brother Sissel because I know he always has something smart to say. Worship Brother Sissel, what do you have this evening for us?
Brian, I'm probably the small intellect in the group, so thank you for calling on me. But when you get to sit and listen to Worshipful Brother Smith, and then follow that up with Brothers Hammer and and Tom Jackson on down the line. All I can say is that as a man who joined the fraternity as a fourth generation Mason growing up around the fraternity, my initial ideas of what the fraternity was, and fast forward 16 years to this time, it has changed dramatically. I find the search for meaning in the fraternity to be much more engaging. Sitting around a table with a small group, participating in events like this, and getting to intellectually be stimulated in conversation. There's nothing wrong with the camaraderie that comes along with the other activities as well, but to not pay attention to the development of the soul, the development of our minds, and however you approach your relationship with the Grand Architect. Ultimately, I say it frequently in our lodge meetings. What did you come here to do? And it's a two-word answer. It is the first two words at least in our obligation, and that is you came here to learn, right? And all of the pancake breakfasts and fish fries and education presentations and books, aside, ultimately you came here to learn. And you can be a student of Freemasonry on the first night, and you can be a student of Freemasonry on the 75th anniversary of that first night. So you should always be a student. The best piece of advice I ever received from a man who was well over 100 years old is you never retire, you just change jobs. And in this case, in the case of the fraternity, your job is to continue to learn. It's just how you learn and what you learn and what you study.
Thank you, Worship Brother. You're smarter than you think you are. Let's see, maybe one or two more comments and then we'll proceed to closing. So anyone else have a final word or comment or question for Worship Brother Jeriel? Okay. Worship Brother Bizak, I'd like to give you the last word before we proceed. Actually, before we do that, I see Worship Brother Hammer's hand up. Worship Brother Hammer, please.
Well, I just want to very briefly say that when Jeriel was describing how he operates his lodge, and I believe, Jerry, you were talking about Anchor Bell, you really can't add anything more to that. He gave a perfect explanation of how to do it, how to approach the postulant, the candidate. That's the way to go about it. So listen well. He did a great job with that, and we're very proud of what he's done with that lodge. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Worship Brother Bizak, the floor is yours for any final comments before we move on.
Thank you, Brian. First of all, Jeriel, excellent presentation. Thank you for the time and effort you put in making that and preparing it. A point that Jeriel made, I think, is extremely important. That is in Andrew's book, is he points out that observance is a state of mind. And as he also points out, and I think many men in this room have pointed out in their writings or books or presentations, is that it seems many members only do what the previous generation has told them they should do. And they have not taken the time to study the history of the fraternity for themselves, much less the delving into the historical, philosophical purposes of this fraternity. That's my personal belief, that in the absence of that state of mind, we are not fully practicing the historical purpose of our craft. I think that's spelled out very clearly in Jeriel's presentation. It's certainly one of the things that I never miss an opportunity, as some of you know, to commend Brother Andrew for his writing of that book, because I too believe it is the most significant book so far this century about our craft. And he is articulate enough and knowledgeable enough to form it in a way that men have not been able to do in this fraternity since the 1840s. But he did it, and he did it at the right time in the history of American Freemasonry. and it has definitely struck a nerve in our fraternity brothers. And if you travel, and if you're fortunate enough to know a lot of Masons around the country and hear their perspectives, Observant Masonry is what is striking the nerve. So, Jeriel, thank you again. Brothers, thank you for attending. Brother Andrew, it's always good to see you. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Worship Brother. Well said. All right, brothers, before we proceed to close, I do want to mention next month is meeting is July 26th, 7 p.m. Eastern. Worship Brother Barry Easton, who's a member of the Rubicon Masonic Society and Kentucky Mason, will be giving a presentation on esoteric Freemasonry. I encourage you all to attend, to go into the deeper meanings, perhaps the mystic meanings, and some more of the symbols of Freemasonry that are more curious about for some people. Worship Brother Easton, again, is a past master and member of the Rubicon Masonic Society. He was not able to make it tonight. We look forward to seeing him at the next meeting. Anyone can RSVP at rubiconmasonicsociety.com/RSVP. And if anyone wants to send an email on a side note to Worship Brother Jeriel Smith, who gave his presentation tonight, his email is in the chat box. And I will refrain from reading that out loud, so that way you can get only the messages that you want from those attended here tonight, Jeriel. Thank you. At this time, I would like to offer the floor to Worship Brother Tom Nitschke, the master of Ware Lodge of Research, for any brief announcements or comments he would like to make. And I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday, brother.
Worship Brother Brian, thank you. Yeah, I look forward to seeing you as well and some other brothers on this thing tonight. Just some quick things. First of all, Brother Smith, excellent presentation. Every time I see and hear stuff like this, it really hits home. And what I would like to see the future of Freemasonry have and continue. And so a couple of things for our Ware Lodge Research members, just real briefly. In November, we will be having Brother Andrew Hammer with us, so we're really excited about that. We got to get some things out, but he will be with us in November, so that'll be coming very, very soon. The other thing is for local members on this presentation, our stated meeting is on Wednesday night at 7:30, so hope you are able to make it. And I would like just a couple of things, to kudos to some of our members. Recently have had some publications. Worshipful Brother Tom Harper was just had an article presented in the Masonic Journal, Masonic, if I can say this right, in the Journal of the Masonic Society, presentation on recently. And two of our brothers on here tonight, they have just written a book, and I'm excited to start reading it. And I'm sure they have, if anything comes from them, it's going to be excellent. So Worshipful Brother John Bizik and Brother Dan Kimball. It's called 21st Century Conversations About Freemasonry, A Candle in the Dark. I'm excited to break it open, and I hope if you get a chance to seek it out and support these worthy brothers. So with that, Worshipful Brother Brian, I give it back to you. Thank you.
Worship Brother Kimball, Worship Brother Bizak, your name was just mentioned in a new publication. Worship Brother Kimball, do you want to give some information about that and before we proceed?
I will defer to Worshipful Brother John to do that, but I do. I have a personal comment for Worshipful Brother Jeriel. I believe I heard you mention earlier in this presentation that you were a senior DMLA, and you may be interested to know that the master of Ware Lodge of Research, Worshipful Brother Tom Nitschke, was just awarded the DMLA Honorary Legion of Honor, and he will receive that on July 23rd of this year. And I know there are other men on here tonight who have a background in DMLA, so we can all join in congratulating Worshipful Brother Tom for that honor.
Great, excellent.
Thank you for mentioning that, Brother Dan. My dad became a Mason in 1957 And in 1959, when I turned 14, I went into Damalay, and it fundamentally changed my life.
Excellent. Thank you. Worshipful Brother Bizak, would you like to mention the new book?
Sure. Brothers, I won't take 10 minutes, but the book is about a Zoom meeting, couple of Zoom meetings actually, that took place prior to the pandemic and during the pandemic. It's about 18 members of the fraternity, our fraternity, across the United States and other places. And I think if you were to read it, you might recognize certain characters throughout the book. But it is a 21st century conversation about Freemasonry, not a mere rehash of what we've had before, and it's contemporary thinking about what men are thinking across the United States, as evidenced through hundreds of Zoom meetings, many of which I know you all have attended.
Thank you.
And brothers, I'd like to also add, I've read that book, outstanding. And if you're interested in this topic, another book that you should not miss is Worshipful Brother Bizak's book, Island Freemasonry. He talks about how the need for observance came into being and the struggles that it has. And it's a really, really significant book for Freemasonry. If you haven't looked at it, get it, read it, and it's very much worth it. I think Brother Bizak is one of the brightest shining lights in American Freemasonry, and his message is an important one.
Well said. Thank you. Regarding any final comments for the Rubicon Masonic Society and Lexington Lodge No. 1, I will tell you that the Rubicon Masonic Society is going to be filming a production this summer in the next coming weeks, actually. Some members have been and will be invited, so be on the lookout for that. You might know who you are already. We are going to be doing our best to put together a very professional video documentary of sorts regarding the Masonic dining experience. Particularly similar to how the Rubicon Masonic Society has conducted festivals in the past. And we look forward to hopefully bringing you a piece of education that is that you can appreciate and learn from. We are excited for that. And although this is not the purpose of this comment, we are always looking for additional donations to help with this cause, as it is not a profitable venture for us, educational only. So if anyone has any interest, would like to participate or help, please send an email to info@rubiconmasonicsociety.com. Worship Brother Tom, would you please deliver a closing devotion this evening?
Brethren, let's pray. Grand Architect of the universe, ruler of heaven and earth, now that we are about to separate and return to our respective places of abode, will thou be pleased so to influence our hearts and minds that we may, each one of us, practice those great moral duties which are inculcated in Freemasonry, and with reverence study and obey the laws which thou hast given us. Amen.
So noted.
Be.
Brothers and friends, thank you for joining us. It's always a pleasure and honor to be amongst you this evening. Some very bright minds, some of the brightest minds in our fraternity's history. Anyone that wants to participate in future series educations, visit RubiconMasonicSociety.com/RSVP. Again, thank you again. Be safe, be well. We will talk to you soon. Have a great night.